Hello and welcome to another video where I'm going to outline the rules for the All Hell Let Loose World War II tabletop wargaming rules written by David Wasilewski. This video is going to look at activation and orders with a kind of a focus really on the sequence of play. There's going to be an awful lot of firing and various other things. I'm not really going to go into the mechanics of how those work. What I just really want to do is show how different formations are able to activate, the kind of the sequence in which that happens, the orders that can be issued, the way to kind of combine those, the flexibility that exists for commanders to kind of use. I'm going to show firing, I'm going to show combat, I'm going to show rallying, but the actual mechanics and details behind that are going to be handled in another video, and I'll do one separately on direct fire, I'll do another one on artillery, indirect fire, and so on. So today's video, again, just going to focus on activation and orders. So what I've done is I've set up a basically just a kind of a throwdown game. I'm going to imagine this is Battle of the Bulge, and the Americans are trying to hold up a German advance in a narrow valley. So the Americans are placed on the table, and I actually have two formations. There's an understrength infantry formation over here, some infantry and a heavy weapons company, and there's a company of Wolverines with some engineers attached, and they're basically trying to hold this town for as long as possible. They've got some artillery support. The artillery's off table, so the Americans have three formations in their battle lineup. The Germans, they have a mechanized infantry unit formation that is coming down this valley, and they have a panzer formation that is coming down the main floor of the valley. In addition, the Germans have an additional formation that is still showing as a strategic counter. It hasn't deployed, and the Germans have some off-table artillery as well. So the Germans have four formations, and the Americans have three. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just go through kind of a turn of play. And we'll just kind of see what occurs. So in order to do that, the Germans place 4 dice into the bag, and the Americans place 3 dice in the bag. Note that both off-table artillery formations both get a dice in the bag because they are eligible to act in this turn. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is draw out the first dice. Okay, and what we have is Americans. So I've now got a choice as the American player as to what do I do, what order do I kind of want to do it in, what do I think the Germans are going to do. Well, I can't find my artillery because, you know, let's assume that this is the first turn, say in the morning. The Americans were maybe anticipating an attack but haven't been able to see what's kind of going on. So there's no target designation down for my artillery. So that's the first thing I really need to do is make sure that I get an artillery target marker down. So I have over here my forward observer, and I'm kind of going to want to get that down. But before I can do that, I have to find out how effective my activation is going to be. So I'm going to take my my armoured combined engineer armoured unit formation over there. I'm going to try and activate it. So what I do is I roll a dice, and depending upon the unit quality, the results of that dice will tell me how successful my activation has been. Now there are three possible results for that formation at the moment. It's at full strength as far as this particular battle is concerned, so we can't get a retire result. That will only be a possibility once it's started to take some casualties. We could get a partial activation, which just allows me effectively to defend myself. We could get a regular activation, which allows me to undertake one order for each unit on the table, and what's happened here is I've got a double activation, which allows me to do two things. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put down my artillery target point, because that's the key thing. I really want to start getting my artillery into the battle. So what I'm going to do is, as long as I have a line of sight, which I do, I'm going to put down my marker, and that now indicates when my artillery is going to come in. So if the German formation moves, then I can track that marker and track the formation with it, as long as my forward observer can continue to observe the German formation move. So that's the first thing, and essentially that is my forward observer's job done. What I have now is some engineers. Well, the engineers here, I think what I'm going to do is put some mines down, try and start mining that route, so that the Germans will struggle to push through when they get there. Okay, so the action allows each engineer unit to place a mine per action. Because I've got a double activation, I think I'm going to do. I'll put some down. There we go. So the route now through the town that the Germans are going to need to take is mined. Okay, now my Wolverines, they've got a pretty good firing range, so they may well be opening up on the German armour. So yes, I have a range of 24 inches. So I'm quite clearly within that, and actually these front tanks are actually within my medium range. So definitely going to open fire with all three of my units. The one at the back there is going to be at long range. So I'm going to roll individually to kind of see what the impact of that is, and that's going to be firing. Now I could choose, because I have a double activation, to undertake what's called sustained fire, which allows me to add one extra to the dice roll. You can't, within this game, fire twice in an activation sequence, even if you double activate, so you can only ever shoot once. But I'm going to choose not to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire them, and then I'm going to put these units into ambush so that they're able to fire again should the Germans move or attack. And that is a much more effective defensive strategy, I think, in this situation than gaining an extra +1 on my firing. So we'll fire the first one, which is at long range. So that misses. We'll fire the next one at medium range, which also misses. And then finally, the third one actually gets a hit. And then we'll see whether it destroys. It does not destroy the German unit. So the German unit that has been hit by this Wolverine, it now gets a disorder and is unable to fire, but can otherwise act normally. That just kind of reflects the fact that some damage has been inflicted on the unit, but it wasn't sufficient to kind of remove it from combat. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to put these Wolverines into ambush. So I'm just going to mark them somehow to indicate that they're in ambush. And what this means now is that they effectively have prepared lines of fire. They've got their tracking targets, that they're basically waiting for an anticipated enemy response. And so I will be able to interrupt the German activations with my troops and fire during that phase. And I think I've got another engineer unit which, rather than putting mines down, I'm also going to put into ambush so that it can help defend if the town is attacked. So once I've kind of done that, I'm pretty happy. That's my formation's activation turn completed. What we'll do now is we draw the next dice out of the bag, place a dice against the formation to indicate that that has already acted, and we draw the next dice out of the bag. So the next dice that came out is German. Now I can't roll the dice and then determine which of my formations to move or act. I have to choose the formation first. And I think in this case, what I'm going to do, I think I will choose my mechanized formation down here, and I will try and get those troops into combat with the Americans over here before the Americans get to go and start shooting at me first. So I'm going to roll to activate and see what happens. Okay, so I get a single activation result. That's fine, that's great. That's pretty much everything I needed, because what I'm going to do now is push my troops forward, and I'm going to issue assault orders to try and get up into the woods over there and get into the Americans before they can fire at me. So with my Hanamags, I start moving forward, and because they're open top vehicles, what I can do is I can dismount my infantry for free and they get to act again. So this is the advantage really of the mechanized units over the regular troops. So they are still now able to act, and I'm going to throw those in here. I'm going to bring that up there. Again, I'm not being overly zealous with the measuring, etc. I'm pretty sure that's all in range, and that's all fine. And what we'll do is bring these forward. But what I'll do is I'm going to keep some of these units down here still in their APCs. We're not going to bother too much about kind of doing that now, because I've kind of moved these units all over there. All of the APCs, that's it. Their turn is kind of over. They're not able to fire. However, my infantry I have 4 of them going in on that line. They can assault, and so we'll do that in a moment. But I have my anti-tank gun, and I have a heavy machine gun over here. So what I'm going to do now is use my heavy machine gun and fire at the Americans in the woods in an attempt to disorder them before the assault goes in. So my heavy machine gun gets a couple of shots, and I'm going to try and target the American heavy machine guns. And I'm going to be at long range. They're in woods, so unfortunately I've missed with both dice. The anti-tank gun is going to have fire at the other anti-tank gun. Oh! And so we've got a hit, and it hasn't destroyed it, but it has put a disorder marker down. So the anti-tank gun is not able to fire in its turn, but it will still be able to defend in the assault. And it's very important when you're doing an assault that you kind of get as much firepower in to the enemy formation as possible in order to try and minimize the defender's ability to fight back. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to pair off to do the assaults. So I have 1-to-1, 1-to-1, but I have 2-to-1 advantage here. Because I'm the assaulting player, the Germans are the assaulting player, they get to choose the order. So I'm going to start here, and the assault sequence is simultaneous because the defender is disordered. And as a result of this, both units have destroyed each other. So those units come off. The Germans are not able to exploit because they have no surviving unit. But what happens now here is the Americans, because they're not disordered, they get to go first, and the effect of any combat will be applied before the Germans roll back. So I think what I'll do is I'll attack where I have a 2-to-1 advantage. So the Americans roll first, and the result is applied. So that's fine. They didn't manage to kill the Germans, but they did manage to inflict some damage on them. So I now have one German attacking with a penalty because it's disordered, and another one attacking normally. Oh dear. So as a net result of that, the Americans have a disorder, but the Germans did not win, and so are pushed back. They cannot take that space, so they retreat. And then the final battle, again, that the American machine guns defending themselves, they go first, and the Germans take damage again but are not destroyed, and then they roll to see what impact they've got, and again, as a result of that, the Americans take a disorder. Now, because they haven't been killed, again, the Germans are forced to retreat, and they cannot remain within close contact. And so at the end of that particular phase, that formation has acted. Again, the important thing here is to see the flexibility in terms of the orders that can be issued, to see how units are able to do different things, and how the combat order that the player chooses can help support objectives. So here I was ensuring that I got my preparatory fire in first before I got the assaults done. Again, not terribly effective, would have liked a bit more, but that's just one of those kind of limitations because of the way the game is playing. And again, my forward observer, I think we're going to put our target marker down here, and he'll now target some of the American infantry defending the edge of the town. So that completes that formation's turn, and so we pull another dice out of the bag. Right, in this case it is an American dice. So because I've already been attacked over here by this formation, I'm going to save the activity that I'm going to assign to this particular formation for later in the turn. I can afford now, I think, to go straight, and let's bring my artillery in, and let's drop my artillery on this tank formation. Now, in this particular game, Battle of the Bulge, the Americans had an awful lot of artillery. So what I've done is I've given the Americans an activation advantage called Inspired, which allows the Americans to roll 2 dice and choose the best result rather than just rolling a single dice. And that reflects the fact that the American artillery was very responsive and that they had plenty of ammunition. The Germans, on the other hand, well, they were struggling with the artillery. A lot of it was horse-drawn. They didn't have that much, and so they were also very concerned about counter-battery fire. They were trying to conserve ammunition because they didn't have an abundance of it, and they were very worried about aircraft attacks. So the German artillery in this game is going to be what we call discouraged. So the German artillery, it rolls 2 dice, but takes the worst result. There are, lots of little things that can be kind of done to just tweak the way that the activation system works that really allows quite a lot of flexibility in mimicking the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of different units. So let's see what happens with my artillery. Okay, so I get a single activation result, and so I'm now going to bring my artillery down on these German tanks. Now, artillery doesn't kill. What it does is it disorders, and so what I get to do is pick 4 targets within a certain distance, and then I roll attacks on each of them. Again, I'll cover exactly how this works in a separate video that will look specifically at artillery, but the key thing here at the moment is just saying this is kind of how the activation sequence can work, and these are the orders that you can kind of give. So I'm just going to quickly go through and do that. So the first tank took no hits. The next tank has taken 1 hit and gets 1 disorder. The next tank's already got 1 disorder. And that now goes up to 3 because I hit it twice. And depending on the unit quality, additional disorder can actually wipe out a unit. So if that tank there takes another disorder, then it is removed from the table. So the German tanks there are in some trouble. And then finally, well, the Americans had a pretty good round there. So they've been able to zero in on those front tanks and hit them. Now, I'm going to leave my target marker there. That can then be moved next turn, dependent on the forward observer. There are, again, potential rules around bonuses for attacking the same spot as you kind of zero in, but for the moment, that will be the American artillery's turn. So with that completed, I now pull out the next dice. And so we have a German dice that comes out. Well, I think the Germans, again, they're not going to move the tank formation forward. I think what they're going to do is see what happens with their artillery. So German artillery is going to roll and see, and oh dear, the Germans have got a poor result, which gives them very, very limited actions. And in the case of off-table artillery, the only action that they're allowed to or really take is firing, but you can't take indirect or make indirect fire if you get a partial activation result. So even though the Germans have called their artillery and provided it with targets, I'm afraid the German artillery either wasn't ready or didn't have its ammo or was too busy fending off a fighter aircraft to be able to assist. And so consequently, the Germans did not get a great result this turn. All right, so that's the next formation ready to act. So we just, again, draw that out of the bag and we'll see what comes. Okay, it's German again. So at this point, I'm definitely going to start moving my tank formation. So what I need to do is roll to activate to see how effectively it does it, and hopefully I won't get a partial activation. Okay, I got a single activation. So what I'm going to do here is, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start rallying some of my troops. So I have 3 tanks that have got some disorder, and basically the rally order allows me to attempt to remove that disorder. Basically I get a dice roll, and dependent on whether I succeed or not, I can remove 1 disorder. So what I'm going to do is just start with this tank up here. It does not get to remove its disorder, but what I am able to do is, whether I'm rallying or whether I'm successful or not, is swap that unit for another unit further back in the formation, as long as they're within half a move of each other, and as long as that other unit is not disordered itself. So what I'm going to do is I will swap this unit with this unit, and again the purpose of doing this is it supports the fact that formations attacked in depth, and it just really reflects the commander of the formation managing his troops. So as troops become blooded, then either reinforcements are sent up and the wounded evacuated, or they're replaced by a fresh platoon, and basically it allows a formation to maintain an attack better than if it was just all in one single line. So really what we're trying to do here is encourage more accurate husbanding and layout of formations. So what I'm going to do now is rally for the next 2. Okay, and again, none of the German formations managed to rally. That is really disappointing for the German player. However, what we are able to do is move the most vulnerable units out of the front line and still provide the Germans with a stronger ability to maintain their attack. Now, the units that moved forward don't count as having acted, although they do count as having moved if they open fire. Whereas the units that have rallied, that is their action for the turn. But what this means now is that I can push the rest of my units forward. I can't fire because, well, unfortunately, didn't really get a good enough result, and you know, that's quite disappointing. But, and again, with some of the bigger vehicles and tanks not having quite as much movement, the Germans have got to be really careful here that they don't end up getting all strung out. But, sorry, moving the wrong thing. That's my target marker for my artillery, and there we are, just moving the dice to indicate that this particular formation has acted. Okay, so as the German tanks have moved up, the Americans, well, they have 3 Wolverines in ambush, and so as the German tanks move up, those Wolverines are going to open fire. So I have 2 at short range and 1 at medium range, and so now we're going to trigger my ambushes. So first attack is a hit. Let's see whether it kills. It does. It does. So we have our first destruction. We have next attack is also a hit, and again the tank is destroyed. And then we have the last attack, which is a miss. Okay, and so I'm going to remove the ambush counters from the Wolverines because their ambush has been triggered. But you can see there, that is how the Americans are able to fire twice in a turn through use of the ambush mechanism. So we're on to the next formation to act. The next formation is German. Well, I just have 1 left, which is this strategic marker. That doesn't require a dice roll to move. It's able to move automatically, but essentially if it gets to within 12 inches of any German unit, any American unit, then it will be forced to deploy. However, right at the moment, I'm quite comfortable that I'm just going to want to move it forward. So I'm just going to move it 12 inches forward, really. I'll just move it behind these tanks here, and again mark it to indicate that it has gone. And then that means that hopefully the next dice out of the bag, if I've counted correctly and taken stuff out, is American. And what do you know? I've managed to succeed. So now with the final act, the Americans got to see what they're going to do. So we'll start here with the heavy machine guns. We're going to attempt to rally, which they fail. Now they're not close enough to any of their formations to be able to swap position. So, well, they got a double activation, which is great, but if I fail to rally, then they're still going to be very close to the enemy. So I'm going to have to take a risk, and they're just going to have to retire disordered, because I just can't afford to leave them there in case they don't rally. We're going to do the same with the next infantry unit, see if we can rally them. No, we can't. So again, they're going to have to, with their second action, they're going to have to pull back, and they remain disordered. I'm going to remove the truck that belonged to the anti-tank gun because that's no longer relevant. I'm now in a situation where my forward observer and my command unit are now closer to the enemy than any other unit, so they are going to be forced to retire. So we roll to see how far back they go, and in this case we see a retreat of some distance, 10 inches. Not catastrophic, but it could be a lot worse. Again, got to make sure in terms of unit coherency that everybody's still within, and fortunately in this case they are. And then we have 2 infantry units that are going to open up on the Hanemags. As soon as they open up on the Hanemags, then the German troops disembark, as they're able to do because it's an open top vehicle. And then we have 1 shot at regular range and another shot at long range, hitting both. So we try and see if we destroy. Neither are destroyed, but we do get to put disorder markers down in place. So 1 there, and one here. Okay, and that concludes a single turn of action in this particular battle. So hopefully that's given an insight into how the formation activation sequence can be used in order to try and build attacks, disrupt enemy attacks, and also how the flexibility within the activation mechanism and the orders give you the capability to actually manage an attack within a formation, and to be able to kind of organize things in a manner that enables you to tactically attack an enemy, even though you're kind of just moving one formation. As I said earlier, I will in subsequent videos look at the direct fire mechanism, have a look at indirect fire in more detail, particularly for artillery and artillery formations, and probably look at the kind of morale, rallying, unit resilience in more detail in yet another video. So thank you very much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button and leave a comment if you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much.